Welcome to My Forever Home, the podcast. I'm Frances Cosway and I've helped hundreds of people create forever homes. I can't wait to share the journey with you. So let's start. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 16 of the Kitchen Design Essentials series as part of the Your Forever Home podcast. It's just amazing to think that we're up to episode 16. I know the last couple of weeks have been myself and Rob Sinclair discussing appliances. And I hope you got masses of value out of listening to that and the ability to now go with really core buying criteria to search for the appliances you need for your kitchen. Today, I'm going to be discussing handles and hardware that you need to think about in terms of your kitchen. But really, it's just incredible to think that episode 16, just talking about kitchens, and I know that we're going to end the season at episode 20. So after this one, we've got 4 more to go with some awesome topics still to come. It just goes to show you that there's so much to think about with regards to kitchens and all the sorts of things that you need to think about to prepare yourself for the right design and all the sorts of intricate details that you need to consider. And I hope that this gives you information, or at least gives you food for thought, things to discuss, but also the ability then to go and research and dig a little deeper into the areas that are of interest to you or that apply to you. So today I'm going to talk about handles and hardware. And for me, they are the areas that can really make or break a kitchen. Handles are something that can really add just that final design finesse to a kitchen. But there's also other options. I mean, handles are also serve a purpose. They are a functionality. They provide you the ability, obviously, to open cupboards and drawers. And so you don't necessarily need to have a handle to be able to have that functionality, but they can also then add a real beautiful design aesthetic if you're deciding to have handles on your kitchen. Hardware is what I'm going to be talking about with regards to what you can do with your cabinetry. So not only the obvious things like your hinges and your drawer runners, but also some core hardware mechanics that are available for your cabinetry that can really add to the functionality and the design of your kitchen, particularly for small spaces. So I'm going to talk about some of those elements too. So let's kick off with handles. Really, handles are, they've come such a long way. That they used to be something that was relatively what I would regard as bog standard, but there are so many beautiful choices now and so many wonderful Australian-made products, which is obviously something that I'm really big on. Particularly now, we really want to be able to support our Australian manufacturers as much as we can. So it's good to know that there are a lot of choices out there that are Australian-made. So they can, like I was saying, affect the finish of your kitchen. So it can depend on the style of the kitchen that can really finish it off. So for example, if you're having a Hampton style kitchen or a shaker style kitchen, they would look a little bit odd if they didn't have handles. The handles are what's going to add that final design piece to make those kitchens look as they should. So they need the handles to complete the aesthetic of that particular style. A contemporary style kitchen, really, really ultra modern and ultra slick, may actually mean that the handles are taking away from that aesthetic. So they're actually intruding on that sleek style that you're having with your kitchen. And so the handle may not actually be the best choice for that particular style. So we're thinking here around the aesthetic, how it finishes the style, but also whether it needs to be handle-less so that that style is also followed through. They can also really lift an ordinary kitchen. So something that may be quite, essentially quite ordinary or quite plain, the handle can actually just make it so much different. It can really lift it can really just lift the kitchen so much. Just by having those handles on there. So they achieve so many things. I mean, they have a functionality purpose. And for those who follow me know that functionality is such a key criteria for me in any design. And so, yes, they enable us to open drawers, open cabinets, but then they also add such a strong aesthetic. So there's two things that we need to look at when we're choosing the right handle, or whether we are going to have an handleless option. They also are a personal preference. So some prefer the look of no handles. We have clients that say, absolutely, I do not want any handles. So then we're looking at alternatives for them. But others say, no, I love the look of a handle. So there's also that personal preference as well. So what are the handle types? So I'm going to be talking about handles per se, but then what are some of the other options from a functionality perspective that are going to enable you to open and close your cabinetry and your drawers, your cupboards and your drawers? So firstly, there's finger pull, and finger pull is exactly that. It enables you, there's a rebate either built into the drawer or underneath the cupboard so that you can get your fingers in there and pull open. Or it's actually made that there's a recess part underneath where you're pulling, but whatever, there is a rebate, there's an area where your fingers can fit in and actually be able to open the drawers or the cupboards, be that under bench or overhead. So that would be a finger pull type of scenario. A lot of the cabinetry manufacturers are now introducing a rebate actually into the cabinetry facade. So that it's already made in there in the factory rather than it being made by the cabinet maker. It's a very streamlined and clean finish. There's nothing that is intruding into that aesthetic. It's all very, very flush. And so some people really like that, that very clean aesthetic, very sleek, and they choose to have a finger pull scenario. One thing to keep in mind with finger pull is it can actually affect the storage that you can have in your drawers in particular, because of the rebate to enable your fingers to be able to pull them open, it does actually affect the depth of the drawer. So you need to be mindful that if the height of the drawer is really a premium for you, that is essential to your storage requirements, finger pull may not be the right solution for you, because there will be a compromise in terms of the depth of the drawers with a finger pull arrangement. The other one that will also give you that sleek handleless look is a push to close mechanism. Now, that is definitely not something that I would suggest for a kitchen. Hallway doors, sometimes in a bathroom, but for kitchens, we're in there all the time, we're leaning up against benches, and what inevitably happens is your knee or your leg will then push the cupboard when you don't really want it to open, and so they just become annoying after a while. And anyone that I know that has had a push to close mechanism in their kitchen cannot stand it for that exact reason. So I would really suggest veering away from push to close mechanisms in kitchens for underneath cupboards. For overheads, you don't really need them, because you can generally have a lip underneath that you can just pull them, and you've got a soft close mechanism. You really don't need to have push to close, as in you've got that push to close mechanism on the cabinetry. Then we have handles, and I'm going to talk about handles and knobs because there is a difference. They can be used together. They can be used in isolation. You may have one or the other, but I just want to talk about handles across the board, just in general. They're generally easier to use. So if you think about the days, if you think about a door handle, decades ago, they were generally round. And, you need to be able to, get your finger around there to pull them and turn them. And not that you need to turn them in a cabinetry scenario in a kitchen, but you need to get your finger around them. And so with a handle, you basically can just use one finger or a couple of fingers to open it. So generally speaking, having a handle is an easier mechanism, particularly when you get older and if you've got arthritis in your hands. A handle is going to be easier to use than a knob. You don't need to grip around it as much. And they're also easier for kids. And I just find personally that when you've got handles, long handles, you can usually use one hand to open. You've just got more capability of getting the drawer or the cupboard open if you've got a handle, I feel. So, you can also go and test them out and see what you prefer. But I think generally speaking, handles are easier from a functionality perspective. Now, they can be placed vertically or horizontally on a cabinet, on the face of a cupboard door. So that gives you a little bit of flexibility. Sometimes that is personal preference, whether you want them at the bottom, that they're running horizontally across the bottom of the bottom of your overhead cupboards, or they're running across the top of your under bench cupboards, or they can be run vertically. I would say that if you've got a pull-out pantry or you've got a fridge, you definitely want to have a vertical handle, because it's going to give you more, what's the word I'm looking for? You've got more thrust to be able to open those heavier pieces rather than having them vertically. So, and it's going to look right because they're vertical anyway. So, you know, vertical or horizontal, it really is a personal preference, but it needs to tie in with you need to be consistent. So make sure that you're not doing, I've seen it where there's verticals and we've got horizontals, you know, on overhead and below. They're all different. So just make sure you've got some consistency. And then on your drawers, it's always best, I've never seen it, but it's always best to have them horizontal. I've never seen them vertical, thank goodness. But make sure, and I see this happen a lot, is you've got one long handle. They need to be in proportion. Your handles always need to be in proportion to the cabinetry width. Really tiny little pokey handles to try and save a little bit of money. And there's not that much price difference between a handle that might be 200 mil long and 400 mil long. But when you've got a really large drawer of, say, a metre wide on your island bench or whatever, you don't want to have a 20 mil handle or 200 mil handles or two of them. It's much easier to have one long handle. You've got more capability to be able to pull the drawer open. And again, if it's not that heavy, that drawer, you can even use one hand. But when you've got to balance it to open the drawer with two separate handles, it's a real pain. So you're much better off having one long handle than two smaller ones. And just make sure that it's long enough for the drawer, as I was saying. They're always going to be centered on the drawer, and you just want to make sure that it's in proportion and not too tiny. They just look wrong. You need to have them, you know, at least 2/3 to 3/4 of the length of the drawer, really depending on exactly how long that drawer is. Be mindful that a T-bar handle, so that's one that, well, it has a little T at the end. You can sometimes get your clothing caught on them as you're walking past. So you might want to have it closed at the end of the handle so that doesn't actually happen. Some people like having the T because they hang things off it. But generally speaking, look, it doesn't really matter. Again, it's a personal preference, but I have had feedback around the T-bar and they were really, really popular in the 90s, the plain stainless steel T-bar handles. And they are an actual classic style of handle, but just keep that in mind. If you do get caught a little bit, that might drive you a little bit crazy. Now, you need to make sure that the style of your handle is in line with the complete aesthetic of your kitchen. So having a super modern style handle in an Art Deco style kitchen is just not going to work. And if you do have a kitchen that is, you know, a nod to heritage and you've got a heritage home, you probably need to be a little bit mindful about the style of handle that you're going to have. They all need to relate, and you know, and that style is carried through into the style of handle. Now, that's not to say you need to go and buy an Art Deco handle, but you need to have something in there that's going to be a little bit softer than, say, ultra modern, so that all is marrying in. Now, generally speaking, and I say that a lot, I realise, handles are used underneath. They can also be used on overhead cupboards, but the other combination is to have handles underneath, no handles on overhead cupboards, or handles underneath and knobs on overhead cupboards. I would really suggest staying away from knobs on under bench cupboards, just because again, you get caught on, they can get in a way. And again, it is a personal preference, but when we're working with clients, we always suggest having handles on the underneath, knobs overhead if a client wants both. As in, they definitely want some sort of hardware on all of the cabinetry in their kitchen. We would then suggest knobs overhead and handles underneath. They weren't keen on handles above. So knobs are, you know, they're just a lot smaller. They can be not as overbearing. Overbearing is probably not the right word. I'm not finding my words today. But obviously it's a lot smaller than having a handle. So it's a little bit more discreet than having a big handle overhead. if someone's not keen to have no handles overhead at all, and so, or no sort of hardware. So a knob can also add another little architectural detail. There are some stunning little knobs, some timber knobs. So it's a really nice way to add a little decorative element without it being overbearing. Keep in mind what I was saying before about the difficulty of them opening on more heavier types of cabinetry. You need to coordinate with them with the handles. So it's good to have them in the same material rather than having, you know, maybe a timber knob overhead and then a metal knob handle in your underbench cabinetry. It's really good to have them from the same family so that they are integrated into that whole kitchen with what's going on underneath as well. Now, in terms of your handle and your knob finishes, lots and lots to choose from. In fact, we are now at a time where there are just such an incredible array of incredible selection of, you know, knobs and handles that's available, which is fantastic. There's a lot of new bespoke supplies on the market and a lot of new players in the Australian market that are made in Australia, and it just makes me so happy that we've got a great selection of stuff that is made in Australia. So in terms of the finish, now metal is obviously a very popular choice. It's been around for a long time, and there's so many different, it's not just, you know, your bog standard stainless steel anymore. We've got living metals that are going to tarnish over time naturally, which gives you a really organic feel, and they feel lived in, they feel, they just feel solid and really part of that whole sustainability feeling of I'm using something that's living. Well, they call it living. It's not actually alive, of course, but it's going to change over time. Not for everyone, the patinas, but it is a beautiful organic style of handle choice, is a living metal. Then you've got your burnish, which means they have a little bit of a, they're not shiny, and they've got that, I suppose, yeah, it's burnish. It's just got this more organic feel to it as well. There's a matte type of metal, which is exactly that. There's polished, and there's also then satin finishes. So it's also working out whether you want a solid metal like a stainless steel, or whether you prefer to have a chrome. You might have a solid brass, and there's obviously lots of different colors of metals as well. So it's good to, you know, have a look at the choices around there. No longer is it just stainless steel and chrome and maybe, you know, satin. It is such a wide variety of metal types and also metal colours. So metal is a big popular one. Then we've got timber. And, you know, we've got beautiful timber knobs as well as timber handles, and they have so many different profiles. We can get circular, there's concave, there's semicircle. You know, if you're thinking about doors that are closing on each other and they form a circle with the two knobs joining together, the two handles joining together, a really beautiful aesthetic. So I'm seeing lots and lots of round types of, or semicircular but organic shaped knobs and handles coming to the fore, which I think is beautiful. It softens everything in our spaces. I talk about that a lot, that everything is so rectangular in our life. So it's really nice to have something different. Then there's also leather. Leather's making quite a comeback. And again, something like leather will also patina over time, just with the oils from your fingers. So they've got that worn look, which I think makes things feel more relaxed. But you can get like loops. You can get a combination of metal with leather, metal handles that are actually then got leather going over the top of them, and also in different color types, so different colors of leather. So that's something else that's a little bit different. And then we've got the combinations, like I was talking about, a combination of timber and metal, combination of leather and metal too. One thing that I get asked a lot is, do I need my handles to match the colour of my tap? And categorically, it doesn't have to match. Your tap can be black and you may have, you know, chrome or stainless steel handles. That's not an issue at all. What I would be mindful of is the other elements in that space, the other type of finishes that you're going to have in that space. So there's nothing to say that you can have a black tap and then black handles, but it might be that you've got black hardware throughout your entire home, which means black handles would look great. It may be that you want to have a feature in your kitchen and make it quite different, but you just need to be mindful of the continuity that's going through the rest of the home. And the other thing to be mindful of is light fittings. So, for example, if you've got light fittings that are, brass, and you've got a brass tap, you probably don't want to then incorporate another type of metal. I mean, they say that, metals these are all the rules that are also there to be broken, but you need to have some sort of continuity with the metals that you are actually using in the space. So also think about your light fittings and what they may be, and then you can create a story and some continuity with those things that are going on in the space as well, not just your other door hardware. Now, I was saying that your size, the proportion of the handle, the size of that is really important in terms of how big it is in relation to the drawer length. But the other thing to think about is, do you want particularly with your cupboards, are you going to have your handle centered? Are you going to have it left aligned? And again, whatever you decide, just make sure that you've got the consistency in terms of whether they are all going to be centered. Drawers will need to be centered, but on your cupboards, whether they're going to be left aligned or whether they're going to be centered. And that will come down to a personal choice. Me, when a client asks me, I generally have them left aligned, or basically aligned so that they're meeting. So the cupboards that are meeting will have one right aligned, one left aligned so that they're meeting, and rather than them being in the middle. But again, that's a personal preference. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, well, hopefully that has given you some food for thought in terms of handles. There's a lot of things to think about. I would go and try your handles. Go into some of the showrooms, have a feel, what grips really well, how does it feel? Some of them are very squared off at the back, some of them are quite rounded at the back on your handles, and people have a personal preference. So you can have a look at them online, you can see that they look okay, but there's nothing nicer than actually going to try them out and see, yeah, I like the way I can grip that, or I like that I've got enough space there, to get my fingers around there, particularly for a man that's got really, really big hands. He needs to be able to feel that he can comfortably get his hands around the back of the handle to be able to pull them out. So it is great to go and feel them, have a look at the finish. Again, what you see online is not necessarily what it's going to look like in real life. We always make sure that our clients can actually see the handle in real life so they can see what that colour is, because it does, anything online is different than what it is in real life in terms of colours. So have a look and just really play around with what you really like, because it needs to work as well as look great. In terms of hardware and internals, so hardware improves the functionality of the internals of your cabinetry. If you think about the lazy Susans that you can get in your, your corner cupboards, but there's also things in terms of your drawer runners and your hinges to make sure that they're really good quality. But they can, the hardware can really improve the design as well as work particularly well in smaller kitchens where you may, space is tight and you need to get a really sophisticated design to make sure that, you have got a really good pantry that can store a lot of food if space is tight, for example. But the other thing is there really is a difference with using cheap runners or cheap hinges. They are so not going to last. And so it is something that I would always say, never skimp on, the few extra dollars it's going to cost you to get a really good brand of runners and hinges so that you know that they're going to last. There is nothing worse even than, drawer runners that are all scratchy and, you open them and it's like, your nails going down a chalkboard. When you've got really good quality ones, they're never going to have that. They can store more. Their capacity in terms of the kilos they can store is much better. And, they've got a lifetime warranty. So for me, it's just an absolute no-brainer that can really make the difference. And the thing like hinges, really good quality hinges, you can get ones that do a complete 180 so that cupboard door can open right out rather than just opening out 90 degrees. So, you get then a lot more flexibility, and that's not just in your kitchen, that's with all your sort of cabinetry that's required. Think about how's that going to be used. For example, in playrooms, so I'm digressing here, I would have something where the cupboard can retract completely back on itself so that the kids can open it up and see it really well, rather than just having a door that opens up 90 degrees. So again, you need the good quality stuff for that. So what are some of the types of hardware and internals that you can get? So we've got lift up cupboard fronts. So instead of having doors that open in a traditional way, you can have ones that, open upwards. What that enables you to do is once they open up, you've got complete line of sight. You've got complete visibility of all those overhead cupboards. They're also used in bathrooms as well. But the other great thing about those is you're not then inhibited by open cupboards that you can knock your head on. So they're up and completely out of the way, because they're going up rather than opening sideways. So that's great. You can get ones that you can do manually. So they're sort of on a spring mechanism. Or you can get the electronic ones, which are a lot more expensive, but basically you push a button, they go up, you push a button and they come down for you. So you don't need to reach up really high, which is great for those that may be a little bit short. And I think, well, once it's up there, how am I going to pull it back? You can use the electronic style of mechanism. They were really big. Talking to our reps, they're saying that they're not as popular as they used to be, but in some kitchen designs, they can make a really big difference to you being able to access what you need, or whether you like having everything open, when you're preparing or cooking or whatever it is. So they're great, but just remembering that the electric are a lot more expensive. Brand new. This has only come out in the last month or so, and that is a pull-out shelf. So you've got a shelf in one of your cabinets. You obviously got a hinge door that can open right out, and then this shelf actually pulls out. So that's awesome when you're storing away appliances, but you want to use them. You can just pull out that shelf and you can actually use that appliance there. So it almost becomes an additional piece of bench space. Now that is really fantastic. One, you don't have to lift the appliance out. So heavy mix masters and things like that can go on there. You pull it out and you can use it. The other great thing is it's really good for and you don't have a lot of space. So for example, in tight kitchens where, yes, you need to store away the appliances, but it's not necessarily an appliance cupboard, you can then, pull that shelf out, locks into place, and then you can use that as additional bench space. Fantastic. That has just been released, and really, really, I know that we're going to be using that a lot. Then you've got bifold doors. Now they can be great for when you've got an appliance cupboard, for example. You can have a bifold door that then opens that right up. And I know we've talked about appliance cupboards in the episode that on pantries and so forth. And a bifold door will then enable you to open that space right out. The bifolds go to the side, and I suppose like a lift up, but that's really designed for overhead cabinetry. When you've got an appliance cupboard, that's going to be at bench height. So a bifold door is going to enable you to open that right out and then close it again, just like it's a cupboard. The other one that we use a lot are retractable doors. Now, these are fantastic for so many different spaces, but they are great for a kitchen. So that's a door that just opens like a hinge door, but it retracts back into the cavity. And what that means is you're effectively doorless. So you've got this space, there's no doors on it. You can open it. It's just like basically like an open area that you can access. So for example, you might have an area in your kitchen that is a workspace. It might be the breakfast prep area. You'd have those retractable doors go back on themselves. Got that all open, and then once all the kids have gone and the breakfast is all done, you can close that up and everything is then packed away and it's out of sight. So retractable doors are fantastic for space saving. You need to be mindful though that there needs to be space for the cavity as well. There's also an electronic mechanism that is available and also fantastic for when it auto closes. So the door will actually, it's a push to close, it will actually close itself. So fantastic for fridges. After a certain amount of seconds, it then can close itself. So your fridge will never be left open. But also great for pantries as well. When you've got a door that opens, push to open, and then that pantry door will actually close itself. So that's a great mechanism, if that's important. Pantry systems. Now, without talking about particular brands per se, there are some great pantry systems. I am not a fan. I may have said it on the pantry podcast now, I can't remember, but I'm not a massive fan of pull-out pantry doors. I just find that everything falls over unless it's jam-packed. You can't see the other side. They're a real pain, in my view. I know some people absolutely love them, but there are some new pantry systems out where they are drawers. They're completely visible the whole way around. You can customize how things stand up in each of those drawers, and the depth can be varied. So there's a lot of pardon me, a lot of flexibility. It's not just some wire basket, and they are fantastic. So the pull-out pantry systems are really good for when you've got a small kitchen and you really need to get some really good storage in there, but you don't have the space for a walk-in pantry. Really, really fantastic system. Then you've got all the other sorts of mod cons that you can get. I mean, I call them mod cons. They can be essential in some kitchens, not as essential in others. So there can be spaces particularly dedicated for your drawers. There can be oil and spice drawers that sit next to your stove that pull out and you've got all your oils in there. There's special areas to put your tea towels. There's particular bin drawers. And this is a really important one in terms of what type of bin mechanism and hardware are you going to get? So you may have it custom made by your cabinet maker where he can create a facility underneath your sink. But there are actual drawer systems that you can buy, hardware internals that you can get. They can be 1, 2, 3, 4 types of bins. And obviously the more bins you're having, the smaller the bins may be. But think about a bin for your recycling, one for your compost, one for your soft plastics, and then one for your actual waste. It was just 2 bins, recycling waste. Then it got to 3 for the compost. Now we're doing 4 because we've also got the soft plastics recycling. So you can have dedicated pull-out drawers with full bins, completely, the length of your underbench cabinetry. You can have double bins where you've got, or double drawers, I should say, 2 bins in each drawer. So they're going to be smaller bins, normally about 15 litres. Or you can have under sink. So again, they can be completely designed to fit around all the plumbing. And then you've got a bin set up, particularly in drawers that are set up under your sink, in specific drawers that are set up under the sink. So Blum, for example, do a really good one that sits under the sink. But look, the 3 brands that I think are really worth looking at are Blum, Hetic and Hafel. They all offer lifetime warranties, really well made, and they all have their own individual hardware type system and drawer internals and so forth. But they also offer really good hinge solutions and drawer runner solutions. So they'd be the ones that I'd be looking at. In terms of your drawer runners and your hinges, like I was saying before, just do not compromise. It is just not worth it to go for some cheap, rubbishy hinge or rubbishy drawer runner. What you need to be mindful of is that every single drawer in your kitchen is fully extendable. Again, the really cheap drawer runners only pull out a certain way. So then you've got maybe 100 mil at the back of the drawer that you can't access easily because the drawer doesn't pull right out. They need to be fully extendable. They need to be soft closed. This sort of stuff used to be sort of add-ons. That is an absolute just non-negotiable, clear necessity for any sort of well-designed kitchen. You need to have fully extendable and soft close on all the mechanisms, including all your cupboards as well. And then, touch to close and soft close overhead so that you basically just touch it and it's just going to close with a soft close mechanism. But also go to the showrooms of the brands that I was talking about earlier, and you can actually see all the different types of mechanisms that are available, and you can see the difference between your the cutlery drawer setups, the sort of the drawer heights. And you can get your cabinet maker to custom make these things, but sometimes then you can't get the inlays that you want, so the cutlery setup that you would like. So it's really good to go and work out what you need as well, so that you can get the right internals priced up with your builder too. So with Blum, Hetic and Hafel, they'll give you a lifetime guarantee. The cheap ones won't. They drag. They don't slide very easily. They've got that crunchy down the chalkboard type and now down the chalkboard sound, which is just terrible. So that's all about your handles and your hardware. Some things to think about. Lots of things to go and investigate. A lot of this stuff you can do online in terms of the different sorts of hardware and internals that can actually be purchased for your cabinetry. A lot of them have little videos on how they actually work, and there's always new things coming out. So what I talk about today, like I was talking about the pull-out lockable shelf, that's just been released. There's going to be a lot of new things that come out all the time as well. And again, just make sure that if you're getting a bit stuck, that, you get the advice about, the type of handle that's going to suit your kitchen, or, okay, can you, help me choose one that's going to have an Art Deco feel, but it's not necessarily a true Art Deco handle. And that was just an example. So don't forget, we're here to help. There's the beautiful kitchen design made easy kitchen course, online course that's still available. Obviously, that's still available at whitepebbleinteriors.com.au. And there's also the book a chat still available, and that's always available, of course. And just to let you know that the Facebook Live is now on a Tuesday at 12:30 rather than the Friday. So show notes are there. There'll be some links for some of these well-known brands so that you can have a look at some of the hardware solutions that are available. And if you've got a kitchen designer, they should be showing you some of the things that are available that are going to make your life easier, that are going to add to a better designed kitchen. Or sometimes if you're doing it yourself, you'll need to then go and stipulate these are the sorts of things that I want to have. But if you don't know what's out there, you don't know just how good it can be for you if it's designed really well. All right, until next week. Next week, I'm going to be talking about decorating and colors. So how do we start creating more than just cabinetry in our kitchen? How do we decorate? How do we choose our colors? I'm going to be talking about the leading piece from a design perspective, and touching on all those things. I know that there's been a lot of waiting for that particular episode, and that'll be launching next week. All right, then, as always, bye for now, and I'll see you next Thursday. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of My Forever Home. If you're ready to renovate or build a new home and you need help to create a beautiful and functional forever home, you can book a chat with me directly at whitepebbleinteriors.com.au/chat. Have a great day.